Welcome to Table Talks. I'm Adam C., the lead pastor here at Orange United Methodist Church.
And I'm Kori Robbins, the associate here at Orange. And today we are really excited to have with us Whitney Brooks. She is a health and wellness consultant, and she's going to be talking with us today about the topic of loneliness. And so we're really excited to have her and to hear her reflections and her expertise in that area. Whitney, would you just introduce yourself to us? Tell us a little bit more about who you are, how you got into this work, and in particular, what is this work?
What is this work? That's the $1 million question. Thank you for that introduction, and thanks for having me here. This is such a cool thing y'all are doing, and such an interesting way to connect, and ultimately connects to what we're talking about today. I'm a health and wellness consultant. I spend a lot of time in my health and wellness practice, coaching practice. I'm an integrative health coach. I'm trained and certified through Duke Integrative Medicine and also nationally board certified. And I do like people to know that because health coaching is a relatively new field. And so it can be hard to explain that to people. And people are like, I don't know what that is. And there can be some skepticism. So I like to, make the connection between a valid program and what I do. And what I do as a health and wellness coach is work with individuals and work with groups on what their health looks like, what well-being looks like to them, what people want to look and feel like in their optimal health and well-being. And a lot of times people don't even know exactly what that is because they can be so far removed from that. So I kind of, I help people find out where they want to be going and then get them pointed in the right direction to get there. Really helping to set some healthy habits so that being healthy doesn't feel like it takes so much work. And sometimes I joke that I'm a professional listener because I do a lot of listening. And in my work around loneliness, what I do is teach and train people how to be intentional listeners and how to practice what's called active listening. You've probably heard that term before.
Well, you might be a professional listener, and sometimes we're called professional talkers. So I think this is a good match today.
Yes.
So thank you. As we are entering into this season, a time that people are quarantining and sheltering at home, it is creating so much loneliness. And what are some of the impacts of loneliness on our well-being? And really, even more specifically, how does it uniquely affect maybe our older adults in our population?
So you know how we're hearing the term new normal being thrown around a lot these days? Loneliness and isolation are actually not the new normal for a lot of senior adults. And it's just, it's being noticed and talked about a lot more right now. And what happens when someone experiences loneliness or maybe isolation? Let me quickly draw a distinction. Someone can be isolated and lonely. Someone can be lonely and not alone. They're two different things. Isolated really is, it's a state of being as a matter of circumstance. It's someone who is alone. Loneliness is more of a feeling, and a lot of times, and you mentioned this, with the holidays coming up and with the pandemic going on and people being forced into isolation, even in assisted living facilities and nursing homes, people are there together in large groups. They're still experiencing loneliness because they can't visit with family. They can't, be together in person with people they really want to be around, their loved ones. And that can take such a toll on someone's mental health and their physical health. I have a notepad with me because I always want to make sure I get these statistics right. And this is really important because it can blow someone's mind. It's just crazy. Senior adults are at a 50% increased risk for dementia with loneliness, when you couple that with loneliness, 29% increased risk of heart disease, 32% increased risk of stroke, and then an increased risk in general for depression, anxiety, and suicide. Wow. So That's without the pandemic, by the way. That's just what the research has shown so far. So you couple all of that with the effects of the pandemic and people being forced into isolation, and it's, it's a recipe for disaster. It's not good. And so that's how senior adults are especially at risk for this, because they're really being forced to isolate more than others.
Yeah. And I know what you said there about isolation and the loneliness, I think we all have probably experienced being in the midst of a crowd and still feeling like the only one there.
Yeah. Yeah. That feeling of being out of place or unseen or not being able to connect.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I know, especially we're not seeing one another and we're not connecting with one another in the same ways that we have been in the past. So I wonder, what are some of the warning signs of that someone might be suffering from loneliness? Ones that you can self-identify, or ones that you might be witnessing in someone else, and then how might we identify and seek help to alleviate that, whether we are self-identifying or seeing those in somebody we love?
Yeah, that's such a good question, because this is so new to a lot of people. And it's new even to people who've been experiencing it for a long time, because loneliness is a tricky thing. It masquerades as other things, and it goes hand in hand with other things. So someone who is exhibiting signs of depression, a lot of negative self-talk, or maybe trying to kind of hide themselves away. There's a lot of shame tied to loneliness and feeling lonely. Research shows that a lot of folks who are experiencing loneliness don't want to admit it, because it can seem like something that's self-inflicted, or that they brought it on themselves. But it's not that simple. So listening for signs of negative self-talk, and examples of that are, well, nobody needs to hear what I think about this, or well, my opinion doesn't really matter. I don't have anything to add. I'm not important. Anything along those lines. And also people in general talking about, what's a good way to put this? I often hear stories when I talk to people about this. I hear someone from the audience will come up afterwards and share a story. This was pre-pandemic, of course, about a parent. I would go visit my mom, and she would have a long grocery list written out, and she'd go to the grocery store and then the bank, and then run her list of errands and come home. And then she'd go to the grocery store again the next day, and I would say, Mom, you wrote a grocery list yesterday. Why don't you just write down everything you need so you don't have to go to the store twice? And she said, now I realize my mom was running errands so that she could be around other people. And that those interactions with the clerk at the grocery store, or someone bagging their groceries, that's a social interaction that they really needed and craved. And so it can be hard to recognize loneliness. It's not super simple, and not painfully obvious all the time.
Well, what if someone's watching this or listening to this today, and they hear themselves being described? Maybe they recognize loneliness in their life. I think of my grandparents that would make the daily trip down to the post office to check the mail, even though they were not having, or probably not getting any mail, but it was the opportunity to get out of the house and see someone else. So what do we say to someone that might be listening to or watching this that is going through that right now?
I would really encourage them to stay in touch. Hey, Mom, hey, Dad, aunt, uncle, sister, brother, call me tomorrow. And if I don't hear from you, I'm going to call you. call me and let me know what the weather's like where you are. Give them a reason to call, because someone who knows that they're experiencing loneliness and might feel that sense of shame, that first step, making that first phone call, can be the hardest. So give them the prompt, call me. And you know what, maybe you call them. That would be my advice.
Right. I mean, I think what I'm hearing you say is to take a step. We're not going to get a way out of the hole without starting to try to climb.
Yeah. It's interesting. There have been so many new programs and mechanisms that have come about to try and combat this. And I mean, like, people reach into the ends of the earth. I'm not making this up. There are robots that they're about this big that cost $1 million a piece. And these robots are being ordered up for assisted living facilities, and someone can operate the robot. It goes from room to room to communicate with people. What's really interesting about this is that, so these robots have a microphone and a recorder built into them, and people will tell this robot things that they won't share with their doctor or their children. That said, we don't need to spend $1 million to be in touch with someone. It really is as simple as picking up the phone. We don't need to teach people to use fancy new technology. Just stay in touch. See how people are doing.
Yeah. Well, and as we are going through this pandemic, and it just, there are glimmers of hope with vaccination news coming out each week, the past couple of weeks. But we know that there's still going to be some real long-term implications of the loneliness that people experience in the midst of this, as well as the short-term implications. So what are some of those long-term kind of things that you foresee coming out of all this? I'm going to put a little spin on this, and that is, I hope that the long-term effect is positive, in that we really are treating this like the serious problem that it is, finally. The UK has been studying on this for years. The UK has a national minister of loneliness. They have lots of free programs in place that the government offers. So that's all fine and good. I think that we're starting to move in that direction, and the pandemic has pushed that to happen. So I think that a long-term piece of this is that we're really going to be looking at this through a much wider lens and taking it more seriously. And in terms of the long-term health effects, I don't know what those are. I get a little nervous when I think about them because I don't think they're good. So I'm an optimist, and I tend to focus on the positive. So I really do have my fingers crossed that's the silver lining in this right now.
It's so interesting that what you're saying. This loneliness has been a problem for especially senior adults long before the pandemic, but how the pandemic has given most people a taste of what so many endure all the time. And so what resources, I mean, that's amazing what you're saying about the UK, but what resources do maybe people within our own communities have? I know I would say our congregation, I hope they know that we're a resource. I know that we were really fortunate to discover the opportunity to talk with you, because you train Stephen ministers for this work of active listening. And so definitely want to put a plug in that we have Stephen ministers at our church, but there are Stephen ministers at many churches whose call on their lives right now is to be an active listener, to help people who are struggling in this way. So what are some resources that you could point towards that people could seek out?
Sure. Stephen ministers are such a great resource. We're so lucky to have them among us. There are lots of resources on the national level. I shouldn't say lots, but AARP has several resources. Some of the larger insurance companies have programs that I would say they're on the ground level phase right now. And then there are programs in some of the, more populated areas. Like I think Florida has its own program called Grand Pals. California has a similar program where they match up senior adults with college folks who have more time on their hands and can run errands with people. And then locally, we're really lucky to have, I've done a lot of work with the North Carolina Baptist Aging Ministry. They call themselves NC-BAM for short. And they have created a program called One Hope. And One Hope features the Hope Line, which is a toll-free number for anyone 65 and older who's experiencing loneliness or isolation, and they can call and just have a friendly voice to talk to. And NC-BAM has really built this program out with, they've created a devotional that is, there are themes of loneliness and how to overcome that built into each devotion. And they're coming up with, they're creating an audio version of that so that if someone doesn't have access to the print version or, if their eyesight isn't what it used to be, then they can listen. And that's really special too, because they can just, close their eyes and sit back and hear a voice, which is nice. So anyone who answers the Hope Line has been trained in active listening. And a big piece of that is practicing non-judgment and practicing compassion. And really, and this is important, and it can sound counterintuitive, but not trying to solve everyone's problem. Really, being there. And there's so much power in just being there for someone. So I would recommend, people look into the One Hope program if they're looking for a free resource. And the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services is starting to work with NC-BAM and the One Hope program because they want to develop something similar. So people are catching on, and there are more and more resources being created.
Well, one of the things that I'm thankful for in the midst of this time is I've heard numerous people in the congregation being worried and concerned about each other. Mm-hmm. And so they're taking that initiative, taking that step to reach out, to send a note, to make a phone call, to drop something off on someone's porch. And, the opportunity to have that community, even if it's not what we're used to or not what we've known in the past, it still helps chip away at some of that isolation I feel like that people have been experiencing and loneliness. And I know when I've been able to be a part of that and just to see a transformation take place from such a simple gesture. Yeah.
And it's, I think I shared with Kori earlier that one of the things I live by is the idea of simple but powerful. Mm-hmm. And that's what you're describing. And, take 5 names out of the directory and send them a postcard and say, hey, you were on my mind this morning when I was going over my morning prayers. And what a special feeling for someone to feel recognized and seen, and then their name in writing. And it's simple but powerful.
Yeah. Well, those are the kind of things I think that in the midst of this time, will help build a stronger community when we come through it. Because I think it does, like you said, it's cast a light on so many issues within our society. In the midst of the pandemic, we've certainly had the light shine upon racial injustices in our nation, the divisiveness within our nation, but some of the good that it's shone light on is some of those needs that we need to be reaching out to one another, for we are one community, one body. So, well, thank you so much for your time with us today. I'm grateful to have a chance for us to connect and talk, and hopefully this has offered some insight for people that have watched or listened. Pastor Kori, do you have any other final questions or thoughts?
Just thank you so much, Whitney. And I do hope that if you are watching this, that you are and you're feeling some of the things that have been described, that you will take advantage of some of those resources or reach out and connect, or let us know that you want us to connect. We're here. So thanks again, Whitney. We really appreciate your time and your expertise.
Thank you too so much. Thank you.
Thanks for watching or listening. Have a great day.